through locally led solutions. I'm aware that APDAN is already recognized by the Committee of African Heads of States and the government on climate change. This gives it the right leverage to undertake its role. Climate finance has been here with us, but access to the finances remains one of the biggest challenges in responding to climate change. I said that will sound like a stuck gramophone record. Because as you know, I was in COP15 in Copenhagen. I was in COP16 in Cancun, in Mexico. I was in Maputo. I was in Paris. Two years ago, I was in Sharm el-Sheikh. From COP15, from Copenhagen to Sharm el-Sheikh, it was the same language. Year in, year out. You got all the time going there to whine, to cry. This is why I was saying that we sound like a stuck gramophone record. The more the things change, the more they remain the same. The continent continues to face some areas of challenges associated with adverse climate change effects. Consequently, the vulnerable segments of our population, particularly the poor in both rural and urban communities, continue to bear the brunt of climate change. You know, as already been said here, that Africa is a victim, not the offender, in this exercise. Africa's emissions is negligible compared to what we are going through globally. Yet you can see that today Africa lives between two twin disasters here. Floods and drought. Year in, year out. This year, this country suffered very severe floods. A lot of infrastructure destroyed. Many people displaced. Up to now, people are still suffering from the consequences of just recent floods. Down there, as we were going through floods here, down the south, there was the drought. They are going through a very severe drought in the south. And this happens across all the continent, year in, year out. So we are victims. Yet the offenders themselves keep on using language. They come and use nice language, but that's all it is. The resolutions are passed, they just ignore. So we need to find a way of forcing implementation of resolutions which are passed. Which means that one such fundamental issue is the promise by the rich countries to play their part and help the countries that contribute the least in greenhouse gas emissions into adaptation. Because of the failure to translate the promises into reality, Africa as a continent still has challenges with access to some of the climate finance sources, such as the Green Climate Fund, Global Environment Facility, Least Developing Countries Fund, Adaptation Fund, Climate Investment Funds, as well as the bilateral and multilateral development partners, which are all well-established avenues for accessing climate finance. Consequently, Africa can only access 4% of the climate finances, which is way below the impactful finance. With the rapid urbanization of our continent and the development trajectory, Africa has an opportunity to chart its own pathways, which will ensure that African cities adapt to climate challenges. Because Africa is urbanizing fairly rapidly now. But urbanization is a global phenomenon. Even in Europe, urbanized. European society was also fairly rural. Through after the Industrial Revolution, that rural urban migration started. And it was not forced. It came gradually. But eventually they planned it and they managed to manage their cities well. Here, at independence, new leadership in the continent was completely ignorant of what was going to happen. Immediately after independence in this country, there was rural-urban migration in the 60s. People were coming to the cities. But then the government at that time asked people to go back to land. There was an order by the head of state then that people go back to the land. Rudi mashambani in Swahili. Even songs were coined. Mzee kasema rudi mashambani hakuna kazi. Mzee kasema rudi mashambani hakuna kazi. People went back to the mashamba. They had nothing useful to do. Started again gradually coming back into the cities. But because the government believed that the order was going to be obeyed, there was no planning to respond to this rural-urban migration. People coming up and started putting up temporary shelters to live in. These shelters eventually grew up and they were now christened informal settlements. Read slums. That is how slums begin to grow in most of our urban areas. Today, as we sit here, over 60% of the population you see on the streets there in Nairobi, those who are not Kenyans, live in slums today. Those who are unplanned settlements, where there are no sanitation, there are no roads, there is no electricity, there is no water. In some of those habitations, they could say there's no toilets. This is what they call the flying toilet. The flying toilet is somebody goes, relieves himself in a newspaper, then throws it away. If you are unfortunate to be passing by, that's what greets you. So these are some of the things that we need to deal with on the continent. This is how serious the situation is. As we host the 10th special session of the African Ministerial Conference on Environment, that's in Abidjan, the African Urban Forums at Addis Ababa, and the World Urban Forum in Cairo, all happening in the last part of this year, we are encouraged to focus our energy and priority on building resilience through key programs, notably financing locally led climate actions and building climate resilience of the urban poor. This will have great potential for both the rural and urban communities. Currently, cities account for about 75% of the world's energy consumption and are responsible for over 70% of the global greenhouse emissions. The way cities are planned, built, and managed is key to reducing carbon emissions and keeping global warming within the limits of 1.5 degrees Celsius as set by the Paris Agreement of 2015 on climate change. Efforts of city authorities must translate into better and sustainable urban environments that result in improved air quality, sustainable use of ecosystems, cleaner energy, reduction of overall energy consumption and greenhouse gas emission, and improved waste management. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, to address the devastating impacts of climate change, we can't continue with the business as usual approach. It is important that we change the game. I strongly believe that AFDAN is the game changer. AFDAN, therefore, has a critical role in supporting the African Union Commission in its commitment to climate action. AFDAN is expected to be fully committed to enhancing mobilization of climate finance and enhance its access to all the 55 African countries. This will help Africa to deal with this issue seriously, because this is an issue that Africa must confront head-on if Africa hopes to develop. Africa is the richest continent on the planet Earth in as far as raw materials are concerned. Yet it is a paradox that the richest is also the poorest in as far as the living conditions of these people are concerned. This is a paradox that we can actually reverse as a people. Yes, you can, the historical reasons to justify what is there today. But we cannot live in history forever. Other countries were also colonized, for example. But they have marched on. So it's time that Africa took its destiny in its own hands and worked as one unit. If we are going to negotiate for compensation, which is our right, because Africa, for example, has got also one of the biggest carbon sinks in the world, the second largest after the Amazon, the Congo forest. So Africa needs to be compensated. But if we go as Kenya, we go as DRC, Nigeria, Guinea, Senegal, Egypt, Algeria, South Africa, then we're not listening to you. They keep on taking you round and round and round. I've told you because I've told you I've been to these international conferences, these COP conferences. The resolutions are being passed. You can talk until your voice is hoarse. But after that, people pack up and go. Heads of state jump or come in on jets, land and quick there to go and make speeches. Making speeches back on the jets and go back. They wait for the next other conference next year. So people who are just going doing those conferences, they move from one conference to another conference. Each year they take 2 months or 3 months camping in those conferences. But nothing concrete comes out of them. You must make sure that something concrete comes out of those conferences. The African Union can be the champion of this. African Union should be able to speak more effectively on behalf of the interests of Africa if the African government give it the power and the mandate to do so. And that's the reason why I've offered myself to run for the position of African Union chairmanship. I hope that I will be able to use that position effectively to represent Africa, to make sure that Africa claims this century. I finished by telling you the story I tell of an African lion. African lion, there are several African lions. In the soccer, those of you who know soccer, the Cameroonians are called the indomitable lions. The ones of Senegal are called the lions of Teranga. The ones of Morocco are called the Atlas lions. So the lion is a very important animal in Africa. See, the king of the jungle. Now the African lion is challenging the Asian tiger. Tell the Asian tiger that you, Asian tiger, you've danced on the world stage alone now for too many decades. The European bear retreated to the poles, North Pole, long time ago. The American panda is also on the retreat. You have been there alone all this time. I myself have been here asleep in the Congo, the jungles of the Congo. But now I'm awake. I have the giant Congo forest, the mighty river Congo, the mighty Nile, the Niger, the Zambezi, the Limpopo, surrounded by peaks, the Kilimanjaro and Kenya to the east, the Atlas Mountains to the west. And here I'm sitting on African gold, African diamonds, African bauxite, African iron ore. And I'm going to turn all this, and African oil, I'm going to turn all this wealth, these raw materials into wealth, and claim the 20th century as truly an African century. End of the message of African land. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much for that captivating speech. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you. Let's take our seats, please. You know, the Prime Minister's challenge us as we head to the conference of the parties in Azerbaijan a couple of days after the much-awaited U.S. elections. We must do things different. And I know the local lion in the world of environment, the CS Aden Duale, is going to fit in the shoes of the man he mentioned in his speech, John Michuki. A short story of John Michuki. He was one of the oldest politicians in Kenya. And when he joined government, in every ministry he worked, he left an indelible mark. In the environment ministry, he is the first minister who dared to do what other ministers never did: clean up River Nairobi. And as CS Aden Duale said, he's going to clean it up and protect it. In the transport sector, he transformed it, the public transport. The order we see on the roads today is because of the late Michuki. May he rest in peace. I'm going to ask you to acknowledge the speeches in a different way. Just like our Prime Minister said, we have to do things different. First, we have to acknowledge the speech by our CS, Lands, Urban Development, Public Works and Housing. Thank you, Honorable Alice Wahome, for your very incisive speech. A clap for her. Again, the Honorable Aden Duale, for your perspicacious speech on matters of environment and what you're going to do as you lead the delegation to COP29 in Azerbaijan. A clap for him. The Honorable John Mbadi, the newest kid on the block. McHugh is just 2 weeks old in his docket, and he has given us a very trenchant speech. A clap for him. And of course, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, for his sharp-witted and rapier-like speech. Very incisive and well-informed. A clap for him. Not forgetting Mr. Ali Mohammed, and I think he is our host here for elucidating to us the purpose of this conference. A clap for him. And then for well-thought-out introductory remarks by Mr. Peter Odinga. Makofi kwake. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to have a photo session before we break for tea. You know, we are Africans and Africa is our business. And tea is one of our core business again, here in Africa. Nairobi is called as it is. And CS reminds me, you know, Nairobi, the word Nairobi is derived from the Maasai word, Enkare Nairobi, meaning place of cool waters. You must enjoy your stay here. This is the, thank you. Okay. CS is reminding me that there will be a session for any other intervention later after tea break. Thank you. I was just saying about Kenya. As you welcome to Kenya, delegates from Nigeria, Morocco, Namibia, Togo, Uganda, Mozambique, Morocco, and every other part of the continent, know that Nairobi is a cool place. Now, I want to welcome you to a photo session, and we're going to do it in the following order. First, we are going to have our cabinet secretaries, the three of them, with the Prime Minister in the first photo here. And I invite you to stand up so that the photographers can capture you. Thank you. And then photographers, be mindful of the video cameraman behind you. Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have the PM, just as they're standing, plus the CSS, and the PS Kingdom of Eswatini, as well as Envoy Ali, Dr. Pacifica Achieng, Ambassador Beatrice Karago, Ambassador of the host country of COP29, Azerbaijan, Envoy Mohammed Nbu. Welcome for this photo. Wait for our host in the COP29. Yeah. Thank you. Then the third one. Yes, take your seats, please. Just remain standing, Honorable CSS and the PM. We have the PM, CSS, and different country representatives. We have Namibia, we have Nigeria, we have Morocco, we have Uganda. I've seen Uganda has 2 representatives, Togo, Mozambique, Ghana. Yes. Namibia, please. Representative of Namibia. Uganda. Spread on the other side, please. Thank you. Ethiopia, yes.